Hi everyone, Susanna Anderson here with the Are They All Yours blog at StephenAndersonFamily.com. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about what I do for my younger students. I have mentioned in some of my earlier videos that for grades 3 and up, I predominantly use the ACES PACES that you see in the picture behind me. And the reason why I use them mostly for grades 3 and up is because the ACE curriculum is intended to be self-instructional. And because of that, it requires students to be able to read independently and on their own, which typically for people who learn to read in English happens independently from about grade 3 and up. So until I get the child to an independent reader, I predominantly use different curriculum for them, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Now, even in the lower grades, grades 1 and 2, I do use the ACES PACES for the math, because that doesn't require actual reading skills, just the recognition of numbers. And also the first grade word building does not require any reading. That is just a writing curriculum that teaches the student to write. So Stephen is 6 years old. He's starting first grade this year. He is doing the ACES PACES. Again, that's the ones that you see behind me, for first grade math and for first grade word building, which is just a writing curriculum. It will teach him to write his letters. But for everything else for him, as well as the younger students, I use other books, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. So beside the math and the writing that I already mentioned, for which I use the ACES PACES, my main focus for the younger kids is teaching them to read. That's really the first and primary thing that children need to learn. And the program that I've used with all of my kids is the Abeka phonics program. Now, Abeka Book is a major publisher of homeschool materials. In fact, they have this massive catalog that they send me every year. This is the current one, and it has 234 pages. And it is very detailed, very in-depth. Those colors across the top, each color is a different grade. So if you're a first-time homeschooler, this catalog can be very overwhelming, and the materials can be very overwhelming. There's just a lot of stuff in there. So I think that's why sometimes moms shy away from it, because there is so much, and it is pricey if you were to buy everything in there. So I'm here to tell you, you can use a phonics program without buying everything they have, and it is a great phonics program. So typically what I do is that I start with the youngest kids, typically a 4-year-old, and they have the readiness skills for that age group. So this will be Boaz's book this year. Fine motor skills are also very critical at that age as a pre-skill to learning to write. So that's what the K4 book is really great for. Now also for K4, Abeka makes the ABC 1-2-3 book as well as the ABC writing tablet. I actually use this for 5-year-olds. And the reason why is that I find that the Abeka phonics curriculum for reluctant readers is about a year ahead of where a reluctant reader would be at. So typically I would use the K4 materials for a 5-year-old, and then the K5 materials for a 6-year-old. And once they get into 2nd grade, I typically have them do 1st and 2nd grade phonics material by basically doing the 1st grade ones in the 1st semester, doing the 2nd grade phonics in the 2nd semester of 2nd grade, and then by the time they start 3rd grade, which is Anna this year, they are then able to get back into the 3rd grade English on all levels. So I take the pace down in the beginning to not frustrate the student, to not exhaust them, and then I pick up the pace in 2nd grade by having them work through the 1st and 2nd grade just in that one school year, catching back up. So the readiness skills are appropriate for a 4-year-old because they don't actually contain any advanced concepts, whereas I would wait on the ABC 1-2-3 until they're 5 years old. And then moving on, for the 5-year-old, I would use this as well as some other reading materials I will show you in a minute. Once they get into 1st grade, these are the materials for 1st grade. This is where Stephen is at this year. So you will see here all the materials available for the K5 grade that I'm using in 1st grade. So here I have Stephen's book, Letters and Sounds K5. And you will see when I go in here that this is pretty advanced for a 5-year-old. It starts out pretty easy, you know, just consonant, vowel, consonant words. But about midway through, the child now has the words that have long as well as short vowel sounds that they have to differentiate. And by the end of the book, they are doing full sentences and learning beginning blends and ending blends, and even some special sounds and diphthongs like the ch earlier or the th here. So this is why I use this in first grade, because I find that for an actual 5-year-old, this can be overwhelming. So if you have a reluctant reader and you have to start them out a little bit slower, you know, there's always time to catch up later when they are more adept at reading. Now, with these materials, along with these materials, Abeka makes many, many readers. A reader is basically a book that teaches a child to read. And you can tell on the top of these readers what grade level they're intended for. So this is a K4. So nobody will be using this year because Stephen is past this point and Boaz is not there yet because they're in 2 years age difference. So I will be using these next year with Boaz, who is 4 years old this year, but I wait until they're 5 years old. So you can see these are just some cute little books and just have some 3-letter words, just short vowel sound only. As well as, and I recommend of these, if you can get them, the teacher copy. And the difference between the teacher copy and the student copy is that the student books come individual like this, whereas the teacher copy is spiral bound and it's keeping, in this case, 8, or in this case, 12 little books together. And that's a lot easier to keep track of. And you can also fold it over for your student. It's a lot easier than bringing along these little books that tend to get torn up and lost. So whenever the teacher's copy is available, I like to use those. So again, nobody's going to use these in my house this year. I'm just showing them. I would use this for a 4-year-old or an advanced 3-year-old. I would use these on a 5-year-old or an advanced 4-year-old. And then for a 6-year-old, I go into K5, which we see here now. And the first thing that I like to go through with them is the blend and word book. And the blend and word book starts out, and you can see that it's been well loved, just with the alphabet, and then blend letters. So this is appropriate for a 5-year-old as practice. So actually Stephen already went through this whole book. But farther back in the book, they then add the ending consonant and even switch at the end to long and silent vowels. So when 2 vowels go walking, the first one does a talking, the second one is silent. That's the 2-vowel rule. So again, Stephen at 5 did read this, and he read some of these. So this is the next step after the blend and word book. There's the I learned to read books. There are 4 of those. Then the I do read books, and there are 4 of those. And they gradually build up, and then the I can read well books, and there's 5 of those. So whereas they start out in the very beginning with, again, just 3-letter words, and you can see how this picks up where the blend and word book left off. They learn the blends, and then they learn to add an ending consonant. So this is pretty easy, and there's some sight words included. By the time they get to the end, they are actually reading stories and more complicated words and beginning blends and ending blends and special sounds and some exceptions. So this is quite a bit more advanced. So by the end of this school year, Stephen will have finished going through these. He's gone through some of them, and you can see at the bottom here, when a student completes a page, I allow them to put a small sticker on that page. So you can tell 2 of my kids have gone through here. That was Anna and Stephen, and they get to put, when they complete a page, they get to put a small sticker on the bottom here, just to encourage them. That's really fun for them to be able to put a little sticker on there. So here it helps them a little bit seeing the pictures, but on the next page they don't have those pictures anymore, and they have to be able to read it without those pictures. So just a really well-made, really beautiful curriculum. Along with all the ones that you're seeing here, this is the flagship book for teaching phonics in the Abeka program, the Handbook for Reading. And this basically also takes the student from the alphabet all the way through, a, e. This is one of the older ones. They've since switched from Indian to Inchworm to be more culturally sensitive. I haven't bought the new edition yet. And just listening for those sounds, to reading with those beginning sounds and then adding a final consonant. And they go through all the letters, just 3-letter words, consonant, vowel, consonant words. And it goes through, and you can tell by the colors in the spine here. So red is all the short vowel words that have just 3 letters. Green, we now have beginning and ending blends. And then when we get into the yellow section, we actually have the special sounds and some more beginning blends, and so on, just section by section, until by the end of the book, it covers all the phonetic exceptions. So this book is intended for grades 1 through 3, although I typically find that it's more like kindergarten through 2nd grade. Ironically, this book is actually graded for the correct levels, whereas these all seem to be 1 grade level ahead. So this book is great as a backbone for what you should be teaching as far as reading and in which order you should be going through, but because you would only be covering maybe 1 page a day, it really does not offer enough practice for the student. So they could learn that the long sound of A says A in acorn, but there's not enough practice here. So that's where all these other books come in, and these other readers, where the student then learns to practice those words more than just from reading that 1 page in the handbook for reading. Now, along the line of practice and readers, Abeka actually releases a full series of readers. And some of these are old edition, but the principle is the same, that all of their readers have a number at the top. So anything that begins with a 1 is intended for 1st grade. So this is 1B, that's Tiptoes is the 2nd book for 1st grade. Fun with Pets is the 1st book in 1st grade. 1.4, 1.5 here, 1.7. And we have 1.8, 1.9, 1.10, and then we have 2.1, 2.3, and so on, all the way up, and I only have them through some of 4th grade. By then, our children are very proficient readers, and they read actual books, and they no longer need these learning to read books. So, depending on what your budget is, you definitely do not need all the readers in the series. The more books you have, the more practice you are able to provide your students with. So for instance, the 1st book, fairly easy. We have beginning blends here. Whereas by the end of 1st grade, which again I would use more with a 7-year-old, they can read these big stories that are far more advanced as far as phonics go. Now, if you are not teaching a child to read in English, all this information you can pretty much discard. The reason why learning to read in English takes so long is because even though I strongly advocate for a phonetic approach in teaching somebody to read English, English is really not a very phonetic language. There are very many exceptions. So if you're teaching a child to read in a language that is more phonetic, for instance, German and Hungarian, students learn to read in 1 year, typically in 1st grade. So they don't need 3 years. Like here, typically kindergarten 1st and 2nd grade, or even kindergarten 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade to learn to read. That's just an idiosyncrasy about English. In other languages, most students learn in 1st grade only, and you could then move on in 2nd grade to doing the things that we start doing in 3rd grade, just because learning to read is such an effort in the English language. So there you have the resources that I use for teaching my younger students to read, and you're welcome to point out any questions below. Now, like I said, the reading, even though it's a foundation, I try to couch it in more fun things. So there are a couple of things I use beside just the reading curriculum. So for the arts and crafts, I once again turned to Abeka. Now this year, Chloe, because she wants to do schoolwork because everybody else is doing schoolwork, I got her the nursery arts and crafts book. And really the only thing that I'm hoping she will learn in this year is just maybe a little bit of attention span, maybe learning to hold her crayons correctly, and just the general concept of sometimes we do fun projects for schoolwork, and it's really just about playing and keeping her busy. Now, if you are a first-time homeschool mom and you only have 1 2-year-old, I do not recommend you buy any school books for them, or if you do, just buy 1, maybe 2 at the most. This is the only book I bought for Chloe. They really should be learning through doing. They should be playing in a yard, digging up bugs and making messes in the kitchen sink with water and experimenting on their own. They really do not need a curriculum. The reason why Chloe wants one is because she has 7 older siblings that are home during the day, that are all sitting down to do schoolwork, and of course she wants to participate. So this will be Chloe's book. This will be her only book this year, but there are others to choose from. Last year we did the Child Art for Twos with Boaz, and that was fun. So just for a little diversion for mom, I'm going to go with this one instead this year. Boaz also did the Learning Numbers with Button Bears 2 years ago, so because I only pick one, I kind of cycle it through based on my interest level. So this year for Boaz, for the little arts and crafts, I bought the Arts and Crafts with Button Bear. Again, this is intended for 2-year-olds, but that's if the mom is doing the project, because Boaz will actually be doing the cutting himself. It is completely appropriate even for a 4-year-old. He will have a lot of fun with this. And it is just everything you need pretty much comes in the book. The student colors things, cuts things out, assembles them, and for the few supplies that are needed, there is a list in the front that outlines the projects that are covered each week, as well as shows the supplies that are needed for each of the projects. And it's just minor things like washable paint, a photo, a little bit of yarn, just things that you will have around the house already. So I like Abeka for that because it's just easy and fast and very engaging to the student. They just get to do a little art project that's fun and easy. So this is for Boaz. So Chloe's only book this year is this one. And then Boaz is doing this for the arts and crafts, as well as I will begin teaching him his letters and going through these little books. But I don't actually expect him to get these done by the end of the school year. And then the only other thing that Boaz is getting this year brings me to another publisher that I like to use. 3 and up, I like to use School of Tomorrow Aces Paces, as well as just for the 1st and 2nd grade for math and word building only. And then for the everything else, the other publisher I like is called Rod and Staff. Now, Rod and Staff is a quote-unquote Christian curriculum in that they do use a King James Bible, and they are claiming to be Christians. They're actually Mennonite, and they teach a false gospel. In fact, when my order came in, they had a tract in there against once saved, always saved. So I don't recommend that you buy their Bible curriculum, or I don't even use the English curriculum, but I still use their materials for the youngest grades. And the reason why is because I really like the way these books are made, and there are 3 series that I recommend. Now this one I could only find an old one of Stephen's, and this series goes in A, B, C, D order. There are 4 little booklets, and these are appropriate for about 4-year-olds. Boaz has already gone through this, and A, B, C, D is just all they need as a 4-year-old. I have them go through these, just some basic things, and then when they get to be 5 and 6 years old, or, Boaz is starting this year because his motor skills are advanced, I go through the A, B, C, D, E, F series, which is this series right here. We skip Bible pictures to color because it is just that. It's just a picture book with a bunch of Bible characters and weird. It kind of like the whole book looks like this picture. I didn't think my kids would benefit from that. So I get all the books except B. So I have A, C, D, E, F. And this is for Boaz, who is 4 years old. He will be working through these books this year. And it basically just teaches all around skills. What goes together, what is missing, learning to trace and write, so some writing skills, cutting and pasting skills, colors, things like that, right and left, big, bigger, smaller, and things like that. By the end of the book, it gets a little bit more advanced. The order of the story, what happened first, lots of cutting and pasting. So these are some great preschool books. Again, there's no set age on these. I typically use these for my 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, depending on aptitude. Boaz is very eager. He's 4 years old, but he has great motor skills. He's very eager, so he's going through these at 4. Now, going up from that, for the 6 and 7-year-olds, is the series up from that. So this is just for the preschoolers, and then the kindergartners, and then I typically use these in 1st and 2nd grade. And this builds on the last series. This is now going G through L. And I have here for Stephen, I don't have the G, but it's H and up. And each book is based on a different theme. So here we have woodland creatures, forest, savanna, ocean. And basically the students continue to work on the crafts and skills, but on a more advanced level than the A through F series. And they learn more number skills. They're doing dot to dots. So this is just a more advanced version of these books. And all of them are just very beautifully made. It is made by that Amish or Mennonite or whatever false gospel publisher, but I'm okay with that because there's nothing doctrinal taught in these little books, and they are just very, very appealing. I've been using these for probably a decade now, and all my students, independent of their learning style, have enjoyed these books tremendously. Very engaging. So, to recap, my 2-year-old Chloe will only be doing this book this year from Abeka. Boaz, my 4-year-old, who is going into K4 or pre-K, is going to be doing the Abeka phonics program, Readiness Skills K4, as well as beginning to read with these little books from Abeka, the little arts and crafts with Button Bear book, as well as the A through F books from Rod and Staff publishers. Now, Rod and Staff does not actually sell them. They don't have a website because of being Mennonite or whatever. So I ordered them from a company called Milestone Books. Milestone Books sells all the Rod and Staff curriculum online. And then for Stephen, who is 6 years old, I will be using Aces Paces math curriculum for 1st grade, as well as their word building curriculum for 1st grade, which focuses on letters and numbers writing. And in addition to that, he will have these H through L books from Rod and Staff publishers. Work through those books, and I also got him the art projects. I went with a K5, not the 1st grade, because when he looked at it, he liked this one better. Really, both are appropriate for both grades. And again, all the projects are pretty self-contained. They're laid out in the beginning of the book of what is covered when and which supplies are needed. And again, these are just things that are found commonly around the house. So this is for Stephen, who is 6 years old and going into 1st grade. And going into 2nd grade, I will continue with the math curriculum with Aces Paces. I will not do the 2nd grade word building unless he is able to read by then. I will get him another art projects book. He will probably finish this one out. And I will probably add the Aces Paces animal science at that point for him, just to round out his curriculum a little bit. And just as a final note, I'm not generally a fan of Abeka. I find their program overwhelming and too teacher intensive for most of it. However, I really love their phonics program. I've said that many times. In fact, you can find a video on this channel of how to teach your child to read, and I explain how to do that step by step using the Abeka phonics curriculum. The method can be adapted to any phonics curriculum, but I use the Abeka curriculum. So I really love Abeka for phonics, and I also like it for the art books, as I already showed you. Now here I got the art projects 3 for Anna, who is going to 3rd grade. I still remember when Solomon made this Bible mobile. In fact, I still have it hanging here in the schoolroom. So this is just great self-taught little art curriculum to keep kids busy, to reward them when they're done with their schoolwork. It goes through by theme from fall through winter. And it's just a great curriculum independently. And then Becca looked at it. Becca's going to 5th grade, and she really wanted to have the more advanced art course. So for her, I ordered Art B. And this is more advanced. They're actually doing blending and some more complicated concepts. So this is for Rebecca, who's going to 5th grade. This is not needed or necessary. This is just a fun little thing to keep the children entertained and busy on something simpler until they're old enough to do something more advanced or intricate. It's a great beginning art curriculum. So I hope this helps you if you're just beginning. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. I'm hoping to put up a lot more content on homeschooling. Thank you for watching.